Are you mentally prepared? Emotionally? Spiritually? Okay, so Willo O'Brien was one of the co-organizers of Yes by Yes Yes, which was this awesome little event, conference of sorts, sort of unconference.
I call it a yestival.
A yestival that was at the Ace in Palm Springs.
Yeah, can I see a raise of hands of who was there?
And
Hi.
it was, for me personally, it was sort of like nerd summer camp where we just like, or sort of nerd spring break. We just hung out in the pool a lot, and like you do at the Ace in Palm Springs, but instead of talking about whatever, we talked about, startups and design. And we had an indie web camp meetup in the pool. That was fun. We talked about, decentralized data ownership, mumble, but in the pool. And there was a prom.
Yeah.
And Willo was kind enough to hop on the speaker roster like 3 days ago when I had 2 speakers cancel on me in one day. So give it up for Willo.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good thing that this is just kind of like stream of thought storytelling, because I was like, okay, well, I have an idea, but it was like 2 days ago that we decided for me to be here. So, but it's really great because I'm so happy to be here, and I've seen this and heard of it and just like thrilled to be a part of it. And I know it's also bittersweet though, because it's the last one, which is exactly what my talk is about, actually. It's the collapse of hope and letting go of what could have been. And so very similar to this, that, he started and who here has like started a big idea, launched a company? Who here is an entrepreneur? Can I see a raise of hands if you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Who here is an artist, considers themselves like an artist? Awesome. So the collapse of hope, which sounds so dramatic, but I think that essentially anytime you start something big, I have made like big, bold leaps in my life, and the first one was probably 10 years ago when I first went out on my own. I've been out on my own for like 10 years and got laid off, actually, and so I was like, okay, well, I feel like I've known pretty much what I wanted to do and like who I am a lot of my life, but you get laid off or something happens like that, and all of a sudden like the bottom drops out from underneath you and you're kind of like lost, that lost feeling where you're like, what do I do next? And so I feel like there's kind of 2 things there, right? Like there's the feeling like you know what you're doing, which is like kind of feeling connected to your purpose or what you're creating or what people are counting on you for. And then there's like, it's good to maybe make money as well. Like there's like that financial security and stability. So I think there's 2 ways that we can feel kind of like lost, is either we're sort of in our fight or flight mode of like, holy shit, I need to actually make money and figure this out, or we're just feeling like lost at sea in terms of what we're supposed to be doing and where we're at. And I think that this happens really big time in 3 different main areas. Probably one is like when you lose a job or have something going on with your career where you're like, what am I supposed to do next? And the second one would be like, after a relationship ends and you're kind of just like, oh my God, you have that feeling of like there's a hole where that once was. And talk about that feeling of like that hope of what could have been. If you've ever been in a situation where you either have launched a business and so like the Farmhouse is such a great example of this, right? Like he's pulled together this huge entire community of fans and supporters, and like it's finally kind of on the map. So once he puts it out, like, okay, Farmhouse 5 is coming, like everyone registers, and it's like to just let that go, like what happens next, right? So my getting back to a personal story of that is, so I went out on my own like 10 years ago. And then about 5 years into it, I was doing like web and flash design, graphic design. Flash totally dates me because that was like so long ago. And doing illustration. And then I was like, I want to do my own thing. I want to do my own baby. So I started a line of gift line. So it was like designer tees and tote bags and greeting cards. And it was Willo Tunes, where geek meets rock and roll. So it was for the Geeks and the Rockers. Many of you guys would have loved the t-shirts, I'm sure. And so that was so fun. And so I did that for a couple years, and I loved it. And it was the same thing, right? Very similar to this, where like I had catalyzed this whole awesome community of fans. Like I'd see my t-shirts in the wild, and people would be like, Willo Tunes! And like it was this whole thing. And it was so exciting. And a couple of years into it, I was like, God, I suck at folding t-shirts, by the way. Like absolutely suck at it. And stress, like stuff like stresses me out. Like having all this inventory just like stressed me out. So I was like, I don't think this is like the business for me after all. And so I was like, but what else do I do? I was so kind of like wrapped up. I mean, that was a very particular case in the sense that like the name of my company was very much like Willo Tunes. Like I was Willo Tunes. I was part of that company. So my identity was really wrapped up in it. And, but I also, so I was like, okay, I want to move on, but this was like my big jump, right? Like this was my big thing that I had created, and this is what people know me as, this is what I do, like what else would I possibly do? So it felt really, I felt like, okay, well, I know I want to move on, but what else do I do? Thankfully, I was able to actually find at that point, a startup that I joined on with, and that was so exciting, and I was like, yes. And so I just put my all into it, and I was co-founder of this startup, which also helped people who are making and selling things. It's called Store Envy. And so I joined on as a co-founder there, and they're kind of like a competitor to Etsy, and it's like a social shopping marketplace. So I did that and worked my ass off for like 6 months. And long story short, we ended up like bringing a huge community and got funding. And then I was just like, something's not right. I need to like hop back out, be on my own again. And so it was like, again, kind of that like, okay, well, wait a second, what am I doing now? You know, so it's like this journey. It's like the classic hero's journey. If any of you guys know Joseph Campbell, it's such a classic hero's journey. I think of like how we go through our lives of finding ourselves feeling like, okay, this is it. I'm so on board. I'm so on the track of where I'm supposed to be. And then all of a sudden kind of finding ourselves like, wait a second, what am I doing again? Like I thought that was it and now it's not. And so here I am. So that year I actually did a video series that was all, I'd learned a lot from basically like working my ass off. And as an artist or as a creative, I have gotten really passionate about how important it is to take care of ourselves. So sort of like self-care and even staying connected to your inspiration and what you love. Because I think a lot of times when we're doing what we love, we can sometimes almost get that like resentment, or like we're so burnt out or so spread so thin that we're like, wait a second, am I supposed to be doing this? I thought this is what I love, but I'm kind of hating it right now. And so really looking at that like burnout. So I created a whole video series all about that, and was on that track, and actually then found another startup and joined on with another startup. But long story short, that I was at for like a year, same thing, it went really great, and then let that go. And this whole like fascinating thing. So I think when we let go of something, right? So I was in that same situation where I was like, well, wait a second. I was like co-founder, you're into the end, like no matter what happens. And then all of a sudden I realized like something's missing, something's not right. And the way that I say it is essentially I've had this career path of like feeling the fear and following my heart anyway. So even when it's totally scary or just feels completely like lost, it's like, I think this is about listening really closely to what is within you, what's missing, right? First of all, like what's missing. And I realized that I was trying to be whatever I could, right? It's kind of like in a partnership, right? Where you're just like, I'm going to just be the best person I can in this. I'm going to just try to give it my all, even though something's not quite right. And yet then at the same time, when you let go and when you're like, I don't know, something's missing, even if it's right for like, so say we're even talking about a relationship, whether it's like being a co-founder at a startup is very similar to being in like a marriage or a relationship. And even when you let go, even though it's good and best for both parties, there's still that like mourning that has to take place, because of what could have been, right? You started with this like these grandiose visions of like what this could be and how great it could be, but then all of a sudden when you have to let go, and then there's even that weird thing of like when you break up with somebody and you have to then share it with other people, and you'll have to almost like sit through their mourning of like their grief about you letting go of your relationship. So I think it's an interesting thing. So I think number one, it starts with listening really closely to, and then now I feel like I also, because I have listened so well, I feel like I'm completely on my path, which feels so cool to be like doing my calling at the heart of it, you know? It sounds so woo-woo, I'm sure, but like it just feels like so amazing. Like I want that feeling for everybody, you know? And I feel like there's so much self-discovery that happens when you are an entrepreneur or if you're an artist and you're actually just really trying to like listen, and keep acting on that. And then to also create a business out of it where you're actually like, you know, marketing it to other people and they're then signed on with your vision. So it's like almost the same thing over again, right? Like catalyzing these awesome like customers and fans in a community and just hoping that they're going to like rally on and stay with you through your various incarnations of creations. So it's pretty exciting. There's actually, I just put out this course that's called Harvest and Thrive, which is essentially all about like leveraging the harvest. So like if you've had this like long career of wherever you've been in your career, it's like what's the thread? So it's like you don't have to. So great example even is Shane in this Farmhouse conference, that he doesn't need to like completely go out there and like, you know, what I say is like he doesn't have to like find brand new fields and like plow the fields and plant new seeds. Like he already has this like really, really rich harvest right here of like people and community. And so like whatever he decides to do next, he can actually leverage this. But there's so often that I see artists and entrepreneurs that think they have to like reinvent the wheel or start something brand new. But it's so beautiful to remember that you have so much like that's within you, and that's, you know, your community and everything, that you can really tie that together and keep going. So there's one specific module on this course that I'm super, super excited about, and it's called Gathering the Courage. And I think it's because if I have done anything, if I've like studied anything the last couple of years, it's been about courage, right? Which there's courage in starting something new. There's courage in making big, bold leaps of joining on as a co-founder and like letting go of my other companies and all these things. And it's like I've almost gotten good at that, right? Like really good at when it's super scary, just going for it and really catalyzing like that movement. But it takes major courage. It takes courage listening and trusting that it's all going to be okay. And I think also that it takes like acceptance. Sort of if I like even drill down some core things about this whole like letting go and moving on or making big jumps, it's I think comes down to, first of all, forgiveness, especially in the letting go, whether it's a relationship or an old job that didn't go well or a position that didn't go well. It's like that forgiveness of just like forgiveness and acceptance of just like, okay, how can I just accept that this is what's going on and like it is what it is, and kind of forgive myself maybe for something not working out, or forgive someone else for something not working out, and then like listening, just staying listening and kind of gathering that courage. One thing, and I love it that there's actually a talk on this today, I think her name's Julie that's talking about this, the woman from GitHub, is all about resilience. And I was like, that ties in so perfectly, so I'm so excited to hear her talk, because it's, yes, because that's one thing, is like we are such resilient creatures. It's one thing that I feel like we can always really count on is, so while this title of my talk was like the collapse of hope, the beautiful thing is that we're such resilient creatures that while we may find ourselves in a place of like feeling really lost sometimes, or feeling really hopeless, or feeling really like, what the fuck is going on with my life? Where am I and what's happening? We inevitably then all of a sudden see a glimmer and see the light and find our way out of it and find ourselves on the next journey. Thank you.